Budget 2024. Jeremy Hunt has just been revealing his budget for this year. Today, of course, is 6th of March, 2024. And we have what people are saying is going to be the last budget before the next general election, which is very likely to happen before the end of this year, and in which most people are expecting the Conservatives to lose and Labour to take over. So you've got to look at some of these policies that they release in these budgets, and you've got to think, well, how long are they going to last for? Remember, there have been some very short-lived policies and indeed prime ministers of late in our government. But anyway, what does it all... I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about the motorists. So what does it all mean for the motorists? Well, thankfully, the RAC has already sent out a release. Boy, they are quick off the mark, I'll tell you that much. So the RAC have sent out a release about their take on the budget. So I'm just going to go through that and talk about some of the stuff that they've talked about. So the good news, well, appears to be good news. And this is something that a friend of mine, Howard Cox, from Fuel UK, he's also a candidate for the Mayor of London, the election that is happening in the 2nd of May. He's been campaigning for this a lot. And what's happened is that the fuel duty has continued to be frozen. So the fuel duty has been kept at 52 pence, 52.95 pence per litre. 52.95 pence per litre. I'll just let that sink in. Because, you know, on the one hand, we're saying, oh, this is good news, fuel duty is frozen. But when you say that, I mean, that's pretty much a third of what you're paying per litre for fuel. 52.95 pence per litre. That's what fuel duty has been kept at. RAC Head of Policy Simon Williams said, with the general election looming, it would have been a huge surprise indeed if the Chancellor had tampered with the political hot potato that is fuel duty in today's budget. It appears the decision of if or when fuel duty will be put back up again has been quietly passed to the next government. And of course, you know, that's an interesting thing to say because you know, that is a very likely situation where, well, it's not our problem. You know, there'll be a new government next year. Let them deal with it. And the reality is that being a Labour government, they're very likely to put that up. I mean, I don't know. You know, yeah, like I said, I'm not here to comment about politics, but I mean, based on the way that they have looked at policies regarding motorists, I think that would be a strong inclination to say that they would probably do something with that fuel duty. But maybe not. Maybe they just want to continue the policies as they are because it appears to be a vote winner, which is why the Conservatives are doing this, because they're obviously trying to get people back on side, considering, you know, how low they are in the polls. RAC, though, is not convinced. But while it is good news, I'm just quoting again, while it is good news that the fuel duty has been kept low, it is unlikely drivers will be breathing a collective sigh of relief, as we don't believe that they fully benefited from the cut that was introduced 2 years ago. So if you remember, there was a 5 pence cut that Rishi Sunak introduced, you know, 2 years ago on petrol, and we all thought, oh, well, that's great, that's going to come down. But as many of you remember, it took a long time, or if ever, for actually to feel that benefit at the pump. And as they say, I'm going to continue reading this, as we don't believe they fully benefited from the cut that was introduced 2 years ago due to retailers upping margins to cover their quote increased costs. So this has meant that fuel prices have been higher than they would have otherwise have been. So basically, whatever cut was introduced was just reabsorbed into profit margins. So I don't think that as a consumer, we really got to see that. I think there was a small period when some of the supermarket prices went down. They've all gone back up again as well. Despite today's positive news, again, reading from this quote from Simon Williams, what's more, despite today's positive news, it's still the case that drivers are once again enduring rising prices, as I just said, at the pump, sparked by the oil price going up. And this, of course, you look at what's happening in the Middle East, you look at the fact that, you know, there are problems with the Houthis that are obstructing the trade routes and stuff like that. Now, of course, the ongoing situation in Gaza, the tragedy that's happening there, and of course in the war in Ukraine. So there's still so much political upheaval in the world. Why do I mention the war in Ukraine? Because, you know, as we discovered, we get a lot of our energy from Russia, and all of this has a knock-on impact. So the average cost of a liter is already up by more than 4 pence since the start of the year. The average price of a cost a litre is already up by more than 4 pence since the start of the year, the start of 2024. So they go on. In February 2024, fuel prices rose at their fastest rate in 5 months. The average cost of a litre of unleaded is £1 or 145 pence, let's say, £1.45. And for diesel, it's £1.53 or 153 pence. So that's what's happening. And of course, this also has an impact on inflation. Fuel prices directly contribute to inflation. ONS has regularly called out falling fuel prices as the main reason for reduction in the headline inflation rate. So obviously, we still have that situation. Check this out, guys. It's my book. It's my first novel, and it's written for car fans like you. It's a fun political action thriller. It's full of cool cars and spectacular action. Get your copy now at Amazon.com. Now, this is interesting. Now, one of the other things that a lot of motorists are finding is that their insurance premiums are skyrocketing. And there's several reasons for that. And I urge you to watch 2 videos that I've got on this channel, both featuring the amazing Tim Kelly, who is the, I'm going to get this wrong, am I? Motor claim guru. I hope I got that right. And he's the expert. He's the walking, talking encyclopedia on the insurance industry. And in one of the videos, we basically talked about the insurance industry and what they do and how they do it and how they come up with rates and stuff like that. And in the other video, he gave invaluable, I would say, really, tips on how to try and get your premiums down. So definitely worth checking out these videos. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps. So what did the RAC say? It's enormously disappointing that the Chancellor didn't take the opportunity to cut insurance premium tax, IPT, in the budget. This is a move that would have helped spiraling motor insurance premiums, would have helped to keep them in check. Instead, even the most careful and cautious of drivers will have to go on battling with rising premiums. Tell us about it. Yeah. You hear what I'm saying, yeah? And younger drivers are disproportionately affected as they end up paying even more in tax on top of their already high premiums. Oh, it's an absolute nightmare for younger drivers. I really feel for young people that want to drive now. Just the cost. I mean, when I look at the cost of just trying to get lessons, if you can get lessons, the ride is just absolutely extraordinary. And you can understand why, so many people are being put off car ownership and driving altogether. This is because it's just so expensive, even to get your license and then to get a car and then to have to pay your insurance, especially if you're a young new driver. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Going on with the quote, it surely can't be right that those who have the least financial means to pay for car insurance end up, in many cases, contributing the most to the government in the form of IPT. Those hardest hit face 2 options: give up driving altogether, or run the gauntlet and break the law by driving uninsured, neither of which are desirable outcomes. Putting it mildly. IPT more than doubled over a 2-year period in the last decade, which is why we believe it's a stealth tax. It's the stealth tax of our time, says the RAC. For that reason, it's high time that it was looked at again. And they even worked out that it adds around £67, actually from the sources ABI, adds about £67 to the average insurance premium. That's what IPT actually adds. So if you feel like you're paying about £70 more than you should be, that's where it might be going. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does. Brown car guy. And finally, this is the other big thing. This is something that Quinton Wilson and Faircharge have been working a lot. But it seems that the government is not listening. And this is to do with trying to encourage a natural transition to EVs, which by, of course, making them more viable and feasible and more logical for people to use. Like, for example, at the moment, so you see me sitting in my car. This is not an EV. This is a 1989 BMW. This is a petrol car. I'm sitting in my car park of my apartment residential block here, and there are no electric chargers here. So I can't charge an electric car here, and I can't exactly run a cable down from my balcony down to here to charge it. That's absurd. The nearest chargers to here are only public chargers, and actually the nearest ones to here are at Morrison's, which is in Queensbury. And there's two chargers there. If you see my video recently charging the BYD Seal, you'll have seen me sitting there charging my car, or charging the car, and you'll also have seen that the cost wasn't exactly cheap in order to do that, and that's what they're getting at. So the problem here, I'm going to just jump to the end here to give you what the actual problem is. VAT charged on electricity at public chargers. So when you take your car, your EV, your electric car, to a public charger and you plug it in and you charge from that electricity, you are paying VAT on that electricity at a rate of 20%. However, if you charge at home, so if you can just, have a smart charger, or even if you just plug in at home, then it's only 5%. I mean, that's massive. 5% to 20%. And, Fair Charge, I believe I've been trying to get that down to an equivalent level in order to encourage, more people to switch to EVs. But at the moment, that's as much as putting fuel in your car. I mean, you're talking about the same sort of price now. In order to charge your EV fully, it's about the same as filling up a tank of fuel, except that you can fill up a tank of fuel in 5 minutes. Again, Simon Williams, quoting Simon Williams, the Chancellor has once again missed a massive opportunity to correct a bizarre tax anomaly and level the playing field when it comes to making running electric vehicles more affordable. As things stand, anyone without a driveway is penalized by having to pay 4 times the rate of VAT when they charge their car at a public charger compared to anyone who is fortunate enough to charge up at home. There's a huge strength of feeling about this issue. Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair to say. With charging networks having committed to passing the savings on in full to drivers. So, unlike maybe the 5 pence cut somewhere else that we talked about earlier, here the charging networks are saying, yeah, you cut the you cut the VAT on this, and we won't take any of that profit margin. That will be passed on to the consumer. Well, that's what they say. But I hope, fingers crossed. What can you say? I'll go on with the quote. So it's enormously frustrating that the Chancellor has chosen to look the other way on this important issue. As campaign group Fair Charge, that's the Quinton Wilson group I was talking about, points out, the current tax rules date from 1994 and were written long before there were electric vehicles on the road. It's also the case that the high upfront cost of electric vehicles risks continuing to put drivers off from making the switch. So again, it's just the high purchase price of electric cars, which still continue to be expensive, although they're coming down, and we're getting closer to parity, but overall they're still more expensive, and they tend to be more higher end, upper end vehicles as well. The UK is now an outlier in Europe in offering no upfront financial incentives. So therefore, we don't have any subsidiaries. We have the BIK. The only thing that really is driving electric vehicle sales in the UK at the moment is company cars, company fleet sales, because of the BIK, benefit in kind tax advantages that you get. But even those are actually coming down a little bit. So that's really it, because there isn't really any other reason to do it, I mean, there's small little things like free congestion charging and stuff like that, but, that's minor in the great scheme of things, right? The UK is now, I've read that. We've long argued, again, RSC, we've long argued that a new plug-in car grant aimed at the cheaper end of the electric car market could encourage many more drivers to make the switch. I agree. As things stand, our research shows that drivers are more likely to choose a petrol model for their next car over an electric one. And I think this is a realization that is more and more beginning to dawn on not the trade. The trade have been screaming and shouting about this for ages. They figured this out a long time ago. But it's starting to dawn on organizations like this, and also on the car industry itself, as we've seen from other videos I've done. See my last EV update. Manufacturers are starting to roll back a little bit on their ambitious EV plans, because they're like, well, we can build them, we can make them, but the demand just isn't there. So why are we investing billions on doing this transition when people don't want them? Anyway, the absence, again, continuing with the quote, the absence of any announcement today to support the transition to EVs is enormously disappointing and risks hampering the speed at which everyone can enjoy the benefits of cleaner driving. Also risks the ZEV mandate, because don't forget, the ZEV mandate dictates that this year 22% of all cars sold must be electric vehicles. Remember, last year it was 16.5%, so that is a major jump we're talking about. So there you go. There is the current findings, or the current commentary on today's budget and how it might impact the motorists. If I missed anything, or if you have any thoughts of your own, I'd love to hear them. Put them in the comments below. A brown car guy.